The CGA Tour, a podcast unlike any other. Now your host, Calvin Alexander.
Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. As always, here I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander, and tonight I am joined by Zev Stein himself, the fellow NBA fan. As I think, are we both wearing Thunder shirts? Yours says Thunder is coming.
Yes, mine is a hybrid Thunder and Game of Thrones shirt. It says House Rumble Thunder is coming.
Ooh, and I've got an SGA like shirt jersey on, so
Yep.
we're killing it here. Big Thunder fans, but of course those topics for a little bit another time. We're in the thick of the NBA playoffs right now. Recording this on Thursday, May 4th, so may the 4th be with you. But with that being said,
And also with you.
thank you so much. I know the Catholic side of it was going to come out at some point, right?
Yeah, sorry.
That was good. That was good. No, I would have said the same thing. So with that being said, here, go through the playoffs, pick some winners, talk through some of the situations we've seen so far, and go from there. So last night we saw Celtics, Sixers. Celtics ended up blowing out the Sixers. They had a lot of stuff that worked really well for them. Mainly, they shot like a bunch more threes and they made 10 more in this in game 2 than they did in game 1. So they made 20 threes. They shot 50 plus, I believe. So pretty good percentage, honestly, not horrible.
Yeah.
But of course, like they blew out the Sixers, and I think they had like 15 less turnovers too. Is there more from that game I'm missing, or were you impressed?
No, I think they made a lot of good adjustments from game 1, and honestly, so here's a weird thing that I think happens when a main player is injured, is that the other team falls asleep and they're like, oh, this game will be fine. And then the other team comes out really hungry and they're like, nah, we're going to be good or even better than you without our main player. And that's what Philly did in game 1. But what the Sixers don't have is like 3 or 4 playmakers on offense at all times. Like it's kind of James Harden, sometimes Maxey, and ... Like they don't have a whole bunch of people who are going to help that offense flow. So I think the Celtics just are going to always make better adjustments. It is weird with their inconsistency, both in the playoffs and in the regular season, because when they're on, they're really on. So it's hard to tell if game 2 is actually going to be like a trend, or if that's just one game at a time, because like they let the Hawks kind of hang around for a while. They were playing with their food, and I don't know. It just seems like what is it? Joe Mazzulla doesn't have as much leadership authority as Udoka did, but I don't know. That could just also be me.
I know. I think you're right, though. I think the toughness of the Celtics is something that's, for whatever reason, like Udoka, we're only going to know all the on-court stuff at the end of the day, really, and everything else is like off the court, just not going to talk about because he's not on the team. Right. But on the court, he was yelling at the players, getting into them after, in timeouts and huddles, and when they're, actively, yelling at him and really coaching him up. It seemed. Much more so like a college coach from the enthusiasm level than an NBA coach. You don't, we're not out here seeing, Steve Kerr necessarily just going after Steph Curry, right? Or Jordan Poole or whatever.
Right.
Darvin Ham's trying to block, Jordan Poole's shot at the end of a game, but that's kind of beside the point. Like I don't think Mazzulla is as in tune or as like aware of how his demeanor comes off on the court.
True.
Or he just
this is his first year. So
right.
And also Udoka came from the Popovich coaching tree, and so like there's a lot that he took in.
Yeah, and there's a lot of it where there's a lot of it where like I'm not going to give like Mazzulla too hard of a time, because I'm like, well, okay, he's like he's first year coach, but Udoka was too, right? Ime?
Right, but I think he had been an assistant for a lot longer than Mazzulla had.
That's also
and I think he had been on like deep playoff run teams as an assistant coach.
Yeah. I just
I don't know. We'll see.
It's
If
it's it's one of those things, yeah, that'll be tough to tell. Like, will the MVP like really, will Joel Embiid really
will
step
it
up?
influence? Will it motivate him, or will it make him lazy and say, "Oh, I got my award. Now I don't have to do as much now."
Yeah. Well, where did
It seems like in his personality to like make that not the end goal, but like the thing that he wants to add to the end of like of his potential championship run.
Oh yeah. Well, where did like where did this James Harden game 1 come from and where did it go in game 2? Right? Like the Celtics made plenty of adjustments so that with Joel Embiid out there, the Sixers were just, still like we're not able to do anything, right? I mean, James Harden came out in game 1 and he scores 45 points and they go into
Doing some
Boston.
step backs like it's like 2015 or 16 Rockets. It was crazy.
Yeah, playing like true MVP level James Harden. And
Hmm.
then we're seeing, okay, man, if this is what the Celtics got put up with, they got put up with this guy. All right, they're in it. And game 2 didn't have it. Like I mean, at one point
I
it's
don't
like a
know.
30-point blowout.
I have always struggled with Harden because he doesn't seem consistent and because his motivations have have seemed like they are very individualistic. Like he's worried about him at the end of the day, and he's not going to be like the Kobe mentality of 110% every single game. I've never gotten that vibe from him, and that's one reason that I've always struggled with him. Even when Westbrook made me mad, he was still like giving it his all, and it doesn't seem like Harden really has done that in a while
Yeah,
consistently.
everyone knows I listen to the Ringer podcast and the assumption from game 1 of Sixers Celtics from Simmons and whoever he was interviewing was, oh well, this is just James Harden saying, hey, this is why you should sign me to like a big contract. This is
Hmm.
why I deserve a big contract. Well, you gotta keep going. Like you can't, it's not like one game is gonna be like the only,
Right.
hey, I won game 1 for us, in Boston. And listen, the Sixers
Cool.
now
Now go
have
and win game 6 or game 7 when it matters the most.
right, right. Well, and the Sixers have like the advantage now. I mean, they have home court advantage now. They
Hmm.
knocked off, Boston and Boston. And now, it goes back to Philly. Game 3, I mean, if they win 2 in a row here in Philly, then all of a sudden you go back to Boston and can close it out.
Yep.
And we're not talking about this at all. This is one of those things where the first game played in Denver, like the Suns, I almost want to say Suns Phoenix game, but clearly Suns Nuggets game. That's one of those where after game 1, there are a lot of immediate reactions. Oh man, maybe the Nuggets just really have this down. The Suns can't do anything, and the Suns look like a shell of himself. And in game 2, we saw like proof of that concept. We see a little bit more building on it. The Suns only scored 87. There's just a lot more of, okay, it's like Katie and Booker, and that's it. I mean, and if either of those guys have a bad game, you're in for a tough, tough time. But
So to
yeah.
here's a broader point, and I feel like
Mhm.
I say this some like probably too frequently, but it's always going to be true. The teams that are better overall passing, I feel like are going to win it 70% of the time, 60% of the time. That, the reason that the Celtics can afford to have a bad game from one or two players is that they have several that'll pick it up if they don't. And to me, the Sixers don't have that. Like that Tobias Harris maybe, Maxi maybe, but they're not like consistent. And with the Nuggets and Suns series, the Nuggets are just way better passing overall. Yes, uh, Suns have point guard Chris Paul, but his groin's not going to let him play, and they don't accommodate the rest of them in their passing for that. It's too much one-on-one pick and roll ISO stuff. So I think the team that always like that's going to pass better is generally going to win.
Yeah.
Like
I
that's why the Warriors have been dominant for so many years. Is that Yeah, they turn it over, but you see how many assists they have per game? Like 25 to 30 every game. If you have that, that's hard to stop.
It's really, really hard to stop. And when Chris Paul's out, like the team generally becomes a shell of itself. And, Kevin Durant and Booker, like you want those guys to have the ball in their hands more often. So there's probably a Suns fan after game one going, you know what? Since Chris Paul's hurt, they should be killing it in game two. Because all of a sudden now Chris Paul won't be handling the ball at all because he's off the court. Right. You've got that philosophy going of you want your playmakers to have the ball in their hand more often than not. But then we see in game two that really doesn't help out at all because you don't have Chris Paul's. I don't want to make too much of it because he's been injured and he hasn't been really like great at all this year. But he still is an elite NBA player from the mental aspect and knows what to do in situations, knows how to go about things. And if he's injured, he's injured. But when he's not, he can at least get the ball up the court consistently. And you don't have like Landry Shamet or, we all love Cameron Payne, but you don't have Cameron Payne like, taking the ball up the court. That generally helps. Generally having like a point guard who you can at least rely upon to be a consistent guy getting the ball up the court. And that generally helps. I was going to say not a defensive liability, but Chris Paul's had some moments where he's been a little bit defensive liability here down the stretch.
I have a funny question to ask you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how do you feel when you're watching these former Thunder players on teams? Do you ever find yourself rooting for them? Because I'm thinking about the Suns specifically. There's a hilarious amount that are on there. Like you got Durant and Cameron Payne and
Chris
Darius
Paul.
Bazley.
Yep, Darius Bazley was the guy I was going to throw out the end. Yep.
Like it's funny whenever I see them, or like watching Schroeder play for the Lakers, and like I honestly find myself kind of rooting for him because I did like him, even if I'm not rooting for them.
Well, like Clippers Suns was easy. It was like, oh man, if Westbrook can just will this out because there's no Kawhi, there's no PG. That was just fun to just be like purely going. This is the best Westbrook situation Westbrook could have. Not from a winning aspect, but from like a Westbrook aspect, right? Like redefining his like popularity in the league and his image and his that type of stuff. Because with the Lakers, he was just made into the absolute scapegoat. He was the same thing happened with Kevin Love when LeBron was in Cleveland. Same thing happened with Chris Bosh when he was at the Heat. And if we go back before in the Cavs, I think it's too young in LeBron's career to really say that he had a guy who was the fulcrum.
He really ruined Zydrunas Ilgauskas' career, man.
Daniel Bobby Gibson had nothing going. Yeah, I mean that's just one of those things, right? Like,
right.
That's what took down Shaq's career because he played with them for a little bit too. It's who's the scapegoat on the LeBron team? It was Russ, but then to answer your question, yeah, for sure I am because with the Clippers it was like, oh man, now Russ isn't playing with LeBron, and I like and respect LeBron James, of course, for so many things he's done, but if LeBron and KD had teamed up together for like a year, right? Let's just hypothetically make up something that would just never happen,
Yeah.
Then I think it would go. Then I think it would just never be KD. It would never be on LeBron. It'd be on that third guy,
Yep.
But like,
there's always going to be someone to deflect to.
Oh yeah, but like right now, the Lakers went in and won, and in Golden State, I guess, but in San Francisco, not Oakland anymore, and they won game one, and the game two's tonight, a little bit later. It'll be a great game too, but is Anthony Davis playing a lot better than LeBron? Is Anthony Davis the best player on this team? And the answer is yes. I mean, it's just is.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis is just eating everyone alive. 30 and 20, 30 points, 20 rebounds, like incredible. But he can't be the scapegoat going forward the rest of this series, and we know LeBron won't be either, right? Like we know LeBron will find this LeBron downfall. It's just, it seems like it's never going to happen because he's really good at crafting his image, really good at crafting the story of LeBron, which is honestly why he's liked and not liked by so many people in the league because he's never at fault. You don't like that friend who can never take any criticism, but I do think that the LeBron deal is like, okay, I'm glad Russ left. I'm glad because I was truly able to just sit there and go, you know what? Why am I rooting for the Clippers? Okay, but still I'm rooting for the Clippers. Like I hope I
Yeah,
hope Westbrook does great because against all odds, this is a true like Westbrook underdog, Westbrook like 2017 kind of team here where it's like, okay, the next best player is Norman Powell. I mean, like who's
right, right.
who's the next best to Russ, and to see Russ be the best player on his side of the court, it's just fun. It's exciting. He's guarding KD. It's like, okay, let's get after it. I'd say I'm more against the Suns from any like former Thunder fan, just because Chris Paul is really a shell of himself. So it's not that much fun rooting for the
Right.
CP3
Well, and he was
days.
only there
Yeah,
1 year. Like it's hard. It's really hard
yeah.
when like I'm thinking about the guys that were there like at least multiple years.
Were you rooting on like campaign? What Darius Baisley was like 2 or 3? You know,
No,
I
but
I mean,
for me, the most fun to root for was the Grizzlies because they had Steven Adams and Jeff Green. Well, Nuggets have Jeff Green now, but like those two are to me like the most fun the former Thunder players to root for.
I do love Steven
Especially Jeff Green
Adams.
and his
Yeah,
old man like sky dunks this year. They're crazy.
I will say Jeff Green still can jump through the roof when he wants to for a dunk. It's crazy, but yeah, I mean, I love watching. Yeah, I love watching certain Thunder players, but like Darius Baisley, don't have a ton of attachment to. Schroeder's kind of the same deal. Like I don't have a ton like of Schroeder, like love just because it's the same type of deal as CP3 there.
Hmm.
And if I'm choosing between both, I'd rather root on CP3 to get a ring because I think he just should have one at some point in his
Right,
career, and
right, right, right.
this may be the last shot, the last really good shot for him to be able to do that. I mean, maybe
Hmm.
he's able to do a backup point guard role in the future, but I don't know. I also gotta say, like, I don't really look at I look at the Nuggets and I don't think of Jeff Green as the Thunder guy anymore whatsoever. Almost the same with Steven Adams and the Grizz, just because I still have like a Steven Adams like sunset jersey because of course it's orange, but I just don't like this is Adams' second team from the Thunder. Like almost like when you're one team removed, it's like, okay, like, I can still follow the path back to the Thunder. I still
Right.
know you weren't that far away, even if it's been a couple of years. Like Steven Adams he was at the Pelicans for a little bit. I think, but maybe it's just a year
It was just a year,
and then
and then
got
he went to the
traded.
Grizzlies.
But now he's been at the Grizzlies for a while, and it's a second team. So it's like, and he's injured. Like if he had been injured for the playoffs, and I'd be like, oh yeah,
Right,
great
right,
seeing
right,
Steven
right. Yeah,
Adams
that's
too.
different.
You
Yeah.
know, I'm trying to think of any of the Eastern Conference teams that are left, if any of them have a hardcore former Thunder guy. Because Grant James Harden, way too far removed now for me to like him whatsoever,
Right,
and I
right,
don't think I
right.
really did ever like him once he left the Thunder, honestly, and was seeking
Yeah, same.
an extra $4
And
million
and the
a
Celtics
year.
didn't keep Muscala as far as I can tell, so it's can't root for them.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Moose, I don't think is playing any minutes. Yeah. So I think it's kind of there. Um, I wanted to ask you though, do you think the Suns can come back? Do you think there's I mean, of course, like there's a chance, but what kind of chance do you give the Suns to come back here? Down 0-2 now.
Um, I'm going to be generous and say 40%
Okay.
because I don't think they don't have the defensive scheme or consistency to stop what Denver does. Because even if you double Jokic, he can find the person cutting or do whatever, or he can take a play off and let Aaron Gordon bulldoze the way to, or Jamal Murray cross someone over and hit a step back, or like there's too much going on. Their spacing is like brilliant, and I don't think that the Suns have had any answer for that. And I don't think Aiton is the guy to stop Jokic at all. He's he's okay, but he's really not going to be the consistent like threat to Jokic. I don't. Is there anybody who can straight shut him down? Maybe Embiid.
Yeah, one on one. I don't know if anyone can stop Jokic. Like I mean, there's a lot of me that goes, okay, we had a great Saturday, or I forget what night it was exactly, but we had a great, I think it was Saturday night basketball matchup. Sixers Nuggets towards the end of the regular season.
Yeah, yeah, no, I remember it.
And at the last minute, Embiid sits out, and it's like, okay, well, he won the first game that was, in Philly.
Mhm.
And is he sitting out because now we won't see these two guys who are going up against each other as MVP front runners and
Right.
see how they do, and we see if Jokic can get kind of the game back, right? See if he can show him up. Yeah, so for me, it's like, all right, like I don't think anyone can shut him down. I don't think anyone can shut Jokic down whatsoever. Weirdly enough. I mean, but also like that just shows that he's the best.
Well, he's just such a unique player. I think that's what is so crazy about it is that you have to respect the jumper, you have to respect the post game, you have to respect the footwork and the pass threat. Yeah, there's just too much.
Yeah, and I do want to ask, like, okay, you got the MVP finalist here. You had Giannis, Jokic, and Embiid. Of those three guys, you've got 3 seasons. Like, let's say you got a blank slate. You can start your team however you want to. You can have anyone in your roster.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the next 3 years of their career. Which one of those 3 guys are you taking? Because for me, it's a really tough question, of course, but it's the playoffs right now have shown which one I take.
You mean these playoffs?
Yeah, these playoffs have shown like, okay, I know which these 3 of the 3 guys here I take.
Yeah, I think right now it's got to be Jokic because he's just on top of it, and also he's not injury prone. He's been an iron horse, and I think I know why. Because he doesn't take all of these athletic gambles that Giannis and Joel are taking because they're trying to posterize people. They're trying to do a whole bunch of shit. They're putting their bodies out there on the line, which is respectable. But the way Jokic plays, he's kind of like
I mean,
if Larry Bird met like Zach Randolph. So he's like he's got like grace and agility and but also like muscles his way in for like rebounds and stuff. And I think his way of playing just makes it so that he's not as prone to getting injured.
yeah, no, I mean, I think you're right. Also, I want to throw this out here too. Looking at it from the injury perspective, you look at it like, okay, how many miles does this guy have on him? Jokic 2nd-round draft pick, so like he's not gonna be playing 40 minutes a night, his rookie year. But he's rookie 2015, 2016 years. He's been in the league now for oh my gosh, just why can I not do math that easily here? But he's been in the league 7 years. So he's played 596 games, averaged 30 minutes a game. Okay. So then we contrast it here with a guy like Embiid, who was drafted before Jokic and has played definitely a lot more games, you would think. But in the regular season, Embiid did not play he didn't get drafted in that season. He got drafted in the 2014 season. He didn't play the first 2 years because he was injured. So Embiid's played 1 less season than Jokic. And he has averaged more minutes a game, but he's played almost 200 less games. He's played 394 games.
Huh.
What I said, 596, 394, so over 200 less games, right? This is all just regular season stats. This is not including the playoffs, though. But Embiid's, I think, one thing that's big here, Embiid averaged 31.8 minutes a game.
Yeah.
He averaged 34 minutes a game this year, whereas Jokic averaged that's not what I'm going to go back to. Yeah, Jokic averaged closer to 30, which 30 versus 31.8 wouldn't think would make that big of a difference. But when you're going over like a whole, 82 game season, like it does. Like if you're averaging a minute less per game played, that can help out a lot, especially when Jokic was kind of shut down, really like slowed the roll on how many minutes he was playing in every single game down the stretch. Too. I almost feel like he was tanking
he
the
had
MVP
all of his
odds.
pieces this year, which is what was so different from the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was inactive for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 5 of the last 7 games to the end of the season, Jokic didn't play. And of those games he did play, of those 2 games he did play out of the last 7, he played 24 minutes and 26 minutes, respectively. So this didn't put a lot of, like, I think Jokic was almost going, I don't want to win the MVP. Like, tank it. I don't want to be a 3-time MVP back to back to back. And then I don't want that to be the focus of my story here going forward. I would much rather it be how I did in the playoffs or not.
So here's a really interesting thing that I'm looking at
Mhm.
on Basketball Reference. Jokic leads so many categories: win shares, offensive win shares, defensive win shares, defensive box plus, offensive box plus, value over replacement. However,
Good old Vorp.
usage rate, he's not even in the top 20 to our point.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have to. That's the thing with Giannis and Joel, because they're respectively 1 and 3, and then Luka is 2, and Ja's 4. They're having to create so much of the offensive flow, and yes, Jokic does, but also everybody else has their own thing going, or has their own way of playing, or contributes better. I think that's the beauty of Denver, is that it's just good, at least offensive team basketball most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that is so much fun to watch about the NBA, you know, like all the contrasting styles too. I mean, you mentioned like I don't see a Joker trying to dunk on anyone or dunk over anyone. And he definitely doesn't look good playing defense. He looks a lot more like me playing defense versus, anyone else. You know what I mean? Like the arms are like, and by me, I mean any guy who doesn't play basketball regularly, or is not an elite NBA athletic guy. You're right. Like, I'm not trying to put myself in the same class as him. I'm just saying, from a looks perspective, he doesn't look like a defensive lockdown guy, especially
but
out
he
on the
just
perimeter.
works hard.
Yeah, I mean, he's going after it at all times. He's going for it. He's
So
not
these are
shying
some
away.
of the people that have a higher usage rate than him: Kristaps Porzingis, Kyle Kuzma, Keldon Johnson, Jalen Green. Like, he's 34th in usage rate, but he somehow leads about 10 different categories. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, what else is crazy though is Lakers winning game 1. We haven't. I mean, I touched on it for a second here, but I want to go back to the Lakers Warriors series. Lakers, did that shock you that they went up 1-0 the way they did, or were you ready for it? Were you like, this is a possibility here?
I thought it was a possibility. I find it interesting, though, because most of the Lakers team now, aside from AD and LeBron, don't have the deep playoff experience. And so it's kind of fun to see D'Angelo Russell playing better. It's kind of fun to see Austin Reeves playing, this crazy hype as he is. I know. Not supposed to talk about the OU boys with you, but got to deal with it. He's playing really well. I think it's cool. I am surprised because usually the Warriors are the best halftime adjustment team in the league. And so usually if something's going bad, they can crack the code at halftime, and then they have a killer third quarter, especially at home, and then they leave people in the dust. But they don't have an answer for Anthony Davis. Like, Kevon Looney, bless him, he does a lot of great stuff, but he can't guard a essentially 7-footer who can go behind the back and do like Dirk Nowitzki-esque fadeaway, and also backdoor cut, get a lob from LeBron, all these different things. Looney's not made for that versatility, I don't think. And there's no one else on the Warriors who can keep up with him. They made a decision with James Wiseman that he just was not worth it. And so they got rid of that center. They don't have anybody. They don't have Zaza to kick someone's ankle out. Like they don't, that's sorry. They're
Yeah.
they just don't have anybody to keep up with it this year. And I never thought I would say this. The Lakers are a grittier team than the Warriors. The Warriors are a more flashy team at this point than the Lakers, but the Lakers have players who weren't always part of this immediate like LA royalty and were on other teams and had to work really hard to get into rotation. Like Vanderbilt and Hachimura and all the stuff. So like, I think they're actually kind of a gritty team, which is cool.
Yeah, I just everyone knows I'm not a Draymond fan whatsoever, and I don't think the way he plays is gritty. Yeah, that's true. He's not. Draymond's also not catching a lot of fun from like LeBron when LeBron couldn't see because Draymond poked him in the eye not too long ago, not too many years ago. But then they're all at the same wedding. Go figure. I just gotta say, like that to me though is not like that's like the Draymond style was at one point really great defense, really great basketball IQ with a lot of crappy technicals, like a lot of like you've got to be kidding me, dude. How is this allowed? Type of technical fouls. And now it's still the technical fouls, still the foul issue, still stepping on guys' chests and thinking they're not going to get thrown out and taunting fans and doing whatever. But now that's no longer grit to me. Like that's just much more of like not fantastic. And I do think the Lakers are grittier. I think they're maybe barely, but I don't love Jordan Poole. When Jordan Poole had his hands out and he was kind of like waving them around like he was a magician or whatever after he made a and one shot, on a three, like that to me was, dude, why are you doing the kind of poke the bear that Dylan Brooks did to LeBron? Now that wasn't at LeBron, that wasn't a comment, that was whatever. But don't do like a little like magic hands thing with your fingers towards a Lakers player in the playoffs when it's like, honestly, just don't do it ever. Like when you win the game, you can gloat. When you win the ring, the championship, the series, whatever it may be, then you can talk smack because you've won. You win, if the Warriors won the game that night, Poole, do whatever, do some magic hands, throw them out there. But otherwise, probably don't. Like I think if you and I are playing 21, I had a great shot, but it's not the game winner. I think I might be smiling a little bit, but I'm definitely not making any gestures towards anyone in any shape or form because I know there's still this game left to play. And especially like if it's against Walter, who you and I both know from high school days, Walter was definitely way better than all of us. So when we're playing basketball with Walter around, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm not going to call it until it's over. Like, How many times?
Take it seriously.
How many times, like 2 summers ago, during COVID times when it was just us trying to go play some basketball and and be safe, so it wasn't just a bunch of bodies knocking around. Were you and I trying to guard Walter on like the deep 3-point line, right? Like it just goes to show you, like, all right, anything can happen, but you don't. The Warriors don't have a solution for Anthony Davis to kind of get back to the point here, just like you're saying with Kevon Looney. It's just not. He's built to get some rebounds and be like, and do some and get some assists and kind of be a good playmaker and close out a series against a guy like Sabonis and the Kings.
Right.
But AD is a different level of guy. He's always in MVP conversations. He's got a ring. He's the guy you trade the whole system for and to get. And the Lakers did it, and it's proven to maybe pay off. I'm watching an ESPN segment like right now that says Curry was held to 27 points. And we're talking about how the Lakers barely won, right? Like usually if your star player scores over 25, that's not like a great outing.
Pretty good guarantee.
Yeah. I mean, when Curry only scored, I think it was like 13 in the first half. It was like, okay, when's he going to turn it up? Yeah, and so he scores 14 in the second half, and he's got 27. And it's a great game from Steph Curry. But the Warriors have a couple things that are gonna hinder him. And one is the Jordan Poole confidence, or overconfidence, I should say. I mean, that was a deep 3-pointer with 12 to 14 seconds left on the, on the clock. That just did not need to be pulled right then and there, and everyone's killing him about it, so I'm not going to stop either. It just there were multiple options during that play, and basically when Jordan Poole pulled up and shot that, it was like, if this goes in, but it didn't. It was one of those that would tear down the roof of.
I think because he got his extension, he's like, oh, now I'm like Dame. Oh, now I'm like Steph. Oh, now I'm like fill in the blank. And so he's like, I have the green light always. And I don't know, it seems to kind of contradict with the rest of the Warriors style, because he's very, I'm going to get mine first rather than look for the best pass. That's why I feel like DiVincenzo is so much better of a fit for them than he is, because he's always just trying to make the right play, doesn't matter what that means.
Yeah, I'm not I don't know. I'm curious here, who's the team you're rooting for, though? At the end of the, who are you rooting for in the playoffs right now? There's and also, isn't there like one East series we haven't talked about whatsoever, just Knicks Heat, which is also just a ton of fun, and like that
it's
series
a throwback.
Is awesome, because I feel like Jimmy Butler's going to be like, he's going to be sizing guys up. He's going to be like, all right, I see. I can't believe they're not playing tonight. It makes me mad, but he just got worse.
I think that's just
a little bit.
The NBA's trying to make it a little bit easier for the players to get some more rest before they go back out, which I do understand. Mm-hmm. And I bet Jimmy Butler's ankle is thankful, because it's probably just in ice like this entire time. I enjoy watching that series. I enjoy seeing Madison Square Garden hype and Melo and Spike Lee dapping it up, and it's a whole atmosphere, and Aaron Rodgers thinking he's New York royalty now, and it's a fun time. But no, they're probably one of the like top 5 hardest working teams, because Tom Thibodeau's squads have to be. Good Lord, that it's a game of his, because you can hear him the whole time, like over both announcers, just blah, 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 blah. Like in the background the entire time, and then they do these poor like post game interviews or like mid quarter interviews, and he sounds like his stoma has been taken out, and I'm like, what? No, it's really fun to see the Knicks playing well again. Like they're the team that it's been fun to make fun of for so long, because they're a big market team that's made hilarious mistakes. Mm-hmm. And they haven't really had a deep playoff run. I think even with Melo, they didn't get past the second round, right?
I don't think. Yeah, it sounds right.
I mean, I think it's been since they were like Van Gundy coached that like they made a big push. Like cell phones were in the middle of the car. Like it's been a long time.
John Starks days, he's out there on the sideline now. Just like Melo is too. Like they're. That's a lot of fun, but though about the Knicks is like there's 2 sides of the series. One is just the Jimmy Butler-ness. I mean, the Jimmy Butler excitement is like awesome, but the other side of it is like seeing these former Knicks guys just being out there, just being like, oh my god, just like John Starks, high-fiving Jalen Brunson, and then you've also got cool. Carmelo jumping on guys he's around, just so excited just to see their.
I had a similar feeling, just to go back to the series real quick. I had a very similar feeling with the Kings, seeing Vlade Divac out there, seeing Jason Williams, seeing Mike Bibby. Like that's powerful stuff. And I hope for their sake they keep a lot of that team together. But can we just talk about Jimmy Butler proving a point? Like he's been absurd. That 50, how many? 55, 56, 53? I don't know. There was an amazing game to watch. I was like half paying attention to it. And then that third quarter happened and he just erupted. And when he hit that 1-3 in the fourth quarter and he turned around and said, "This is my city," like reminiscent of the D Wade moment. That was some cool ass shit.
56 points in a playoff game is just incredible. In a game 7, closing it out, no, it's a game 5. What am I talking about? Game 5, closing it out. It's the main reason why I take Jokic right now for the next 3 years over Giannis. It's like, all right, like Jokic won the MVP last year. And you know what? Giannis has done incredible stuff too. But like Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, I don't know if I'd take both of them over Jamal Murray. But
I wouldn't. I wouldn't. No.
Right? But like that just goes to show you what Jokic is playing with. Like Drew Holiday voted best defender in the league. Worst guy you want to see on the other side guarding you by every other NBA player in the league, right? It's with consensus by a margin.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got Chris Middleton, who when healthy is great, and honestly he was pretty healthy. And then you've got the Miami Heat, who lose Oladipo, lose Tyler Hero, and still win in 5 games. Like,
I know.
If it had been a 1-8 sweep where the Heat had just won every game, I think we'd be talking about this for the next 20 years. And instead, it's going to be like 5. Because it's going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Jimmy Butler. The Jimmy Butler willpower just won him. But I do love the Butler like aspect of him nodding his head a little bit, whenever all the
well,
Knicks
and I
fans were
mean,
chanting
it's
at the end
kind
of
of
the game,
like
like
one
he's
of those
taking it in.
moments.
Yeah.
It's one of those moments where the Timberwolves and the Sixers got to feel kind of like idiots because they went with kind of like the bratty star power, and he's showing them, nah, like I'm the guy that's going to be like when you need that bucket, when you need that thing, like I'm that guy.
Timberwolves taking Karl-Anthony Towns over Jimmy Butler is completely defensible at the time. And right now it's like, what? Really?
Yeah.
You did that?
Yep.
I don't know about that. That might have not been the. Now, if you don't get Anthony Edwards, all of this is for naught. I think that guy's like the real deal and could be incredibly good for him. It's just real fascinating to me how the Jimmy Butler story, like every year we learn so much about it in the months of April and May, and then a little bit of June, and then we won't learn anything at all about Jimmy Butler's entire life for the rest of the year because he's like he's just not playing that well, or he's averaging like a fair amount of points, but not great. Like
he knows when to turn it on.
Jimmy Butler's got that switch, like any other guy, right? Like I think you've played basketball, not to bring my basketball playing prowess into the NBA talk too much, but why not? My podcast. I got to say, you've seen it before where you're like, dang it, Calvin. Okay, now you're just going to be mad the entire rest of the time until we stop playing, right? Like, just kind of just like flip the switch and I'll be mad. I'll just be like just really frustrated and very physical, way too much so, and like bowl somebody over. I won't break anyone's ribs. Thanks, Walter. But I will just be like super physical and, aggressive with everyone and like getting into it. That's, of course, not what Jimmy Butler's doing. Jimmy Butler's doing that, but he's an NBA player and he's a superstar athlete. It just is so weird to me how we can talk about the Heat and go, yeah, I think they could win this series. Like they won 1 out of 2 in New York. They're coming back home the same way the Sixers come back home where they're like, we win 2 at home. All of a sudden, we're right back in this. It's like, okay, you know what? You could.
That's true, but a lot of it does ride on how much Jimmy can do. Like if that ankle really is messed up and sprained, there's not going to be a whole lot he can do because that was a hard roll. I mean, that was a pretty vicious.
But I mean, I don't. Jimmy Butler, right? He has the crown right now for guys I don't want to bet against, right? Like I don't want to bet. You know what? He is the league MVP of guys I don't want to bet against. And honestly, in any sport, like when the chips are down, if anyone's like, okay, you got to bet on Jimmy Butler or the field, I'm going to bet on Butler. I don't know why exactly, but I just feel like it's going to be crazy and it's going to work somehow, some way. Because going into the Bucks Heat series, how many of those games were on NBA TV? How many of those games were just like, all right, well, the Bucks will probably win in 5 or 6. Maybe Jimmy Butler will have a game and that'll be it. Instead, it was like, oh, Giannis gets injured, doesn't play every game, and all of a sudden, it's crazy. Like, okay, it's a Jimmy Butler series.
Right.
And real quick before we close this one out here, I want to ask you, Mike Budenholzer just got let go by the Bucks. You
Oh
think this
wow,
is the right?
really?
Yeah, I mean that literally. Yeah, I just got a notification like a minute ago. So
Oh my
we're
God.
coming to you live with this info. What are your thoughts on Budenholzer going? Is that the right move for the Bucks? Do they need to make a switch here?
I don't think so. I think that was dumb. I really get frustrated with teams that do that, that have the disappointing thing and they have the knee-jerk reaction and they say, "Oh, it must be on the coach. We need to move a different direction." Man, there was an injury problem this year, and then last year there was like too stiff a competition, but he fits perfectly with that scheme. He gets them to play really well offensively. I don't know who's going to be better for them if unless they're going to poach someone. But like,
Quinn Snyder finds a way to nullify his contract with the Hawks and then goes there or something. I mean, there's
no, I think if it was if anyone's going to
oh,
go there, it's going to be Kenny Atkinson from the Warriors, right? It has that same like spread it all around and 3-and-D kind of a coach.
well, yeah, the Quinn Snyder one to me is it's weird he decided to go be a Hawks head coach when it seems like at the end of the day there was probably a better situation he could have gone to coach. Quinn Snyder seemed like a name that was being like talked about in the league. Like, all right, right now, who would you rather have as head coach of the Oklahoma State Thunder if you only got to pick between Quinn Snyder and Kenny Atkinson? Like, I don't know, it's kind of toss up. It's not like a clear fire like, oh, Atkinson for sure. He's got so much beforehand prowess. Now, if you also
and I'm
throw
not going to say
Budenholzer in
Quinn
there,
Snyder because the once he gets to the playoffs, it's like someone blew out his candle. Like I'm not about to root for that.
well, he also looks like he came out of the same cellar that, Pat Riley's been held up in for a while after the playoffs, just with the greasy hair and slicked back. He's like absolutely distraught from
He
whatever's
looks
going
like
on
he
in their
could put
life.
on a cape and like a little red bow tie and just be the count.
Yeah, he could have the little
I can
things a
see
little
it.
bit, like, to
Hmm.
go to you a little bit, really get into it. I'd say if Budenholzer is also like an option, though, I would take Budenholzer because there's only so many coaches who have won NBA championships who are still coaching.
Right. Well,
And
I think
I
that's
don't
one thing
know.
that the Thunder are going to have to think real hard about this summer is, are we playing the long-term development game? Because there's two guys now, two that I think would be better coaches than Mark Dagnall, and I love Mark Dagnall, but you've got Nick Nurse and you've got Mike Budenholzer that are just out there.
Ooh, maybe Nurse go. You know what? Nurse
And I
probably
think
goes to the
Nurse,
Bucks.
he's so good at
Nurse.
player development, and he does the patient scheme, and he's a Canadian dude, so I think he would be able to keep SGA and Lou Dort together better.
Does that have that much to do with it? I don't know.
I'm just saying in terms of like
I'm just.
loyalties, because I'm worried about them leaving for the Raptors, so it'd be better if he could be here and they would be like, oh yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's fair.
Maybe
He
that
can
has
be
nothing to
like
do with it, but
he can pronounce a boot correctly. To the other Canadian guys. Really get into it a little bit.
they're just gonna say sorry a whole lot.
Yeah. Sorry. Sorry about this. That's my worst Canadian accent I've ever done in my entire life. But it's always gonna be horrible. I mean, that's an option. I just think it's crazy that Budenholzer gets fired and they don't like. Why did he get fired today? Maybe it's because Nurse is right there, willing and waiting, or whatever.
Oh,
Because we
you
can
think that they've already
only
had talks or something?
because to me, like when the Grizzlies told Dylan Brooks on like Monday, it's on May 1st, and they're like, we won't resign you under any circumstances, right? Why? Why would you tell him that then? Why would you not just go like, hey, thanks so much. Like, we'll talk about contracts this offseason, and you're good. Because then at least you hold the chips of like, maybe a team will try to sign and trade for Brooks at a really low value. Because granted, he played horribly down the stretch and was not a good locker room guy whatsoever down the stretch, right? But like, there's still, if a guy's on your roster, it's better than having him not. Like, every single trade we've ever seen is, would you rather have the asset or not the asset? You rather have the cap space or not or not. And it's like, really every single guy always goes, well, we got to resign Kawhi and Paul George because we'd rather have them versus not. That's kind of a no-brainer. But like Damian Lillard at $60 million a year the last year of his contract, it's like, well, I mean, like, what are we, we'd rather have the asset versus not. And so why much different levels here, of course, much different risk factors. So there's just not the same comparison. But like Dylan Brooks, like, I'm sure his agent is out there saying, "Yep, they said yeah, they won't re-sign him under any circumstances. They're unwilling to, even if they'd, be able to re-sign him for $1. Like they're still not going to do it. It's like, okay, like who's coming out with this info? Who's publicizing this? Who's,
Right.
whatever. It just seems odd to me that you do this right now. Like, what if, what if something crazy happens here and Eric Spoelstra gets fired from Miami Heat for some godforsaken reason, or he decides to leave because he just really loves, because he really loves cold weather, and is like Milwaukee's always been a big, right? Like, why do something now? I think
Right.
Spoelstra's one of the best coaches in the NBA, next to Pop, and
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. Just why? Unless Budenholzer's contract like expired today, but it just didn't because the playoffs are still going. I just don't get why you do stuff during the playoffs unless you want it to not be a big story, and that's probably it. Budenholzer gets fired, and then the Lakers Warriors is, in a little bit, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, you know what? We're not
You
talking about
know,
this in like 3 weeks or 2 weeks or a week.
here's what I also often wonder in this situation. Who did he have a disagreement with that led to that? Because there had to be, things can't be all hunky dory if suddenly you're on the outs. So who did he have like an argument with? Giannis? Did he have an argument with management, with the owner, with the general manager?
Giannis
Or
Giannis said in post game interviews after the series was over, yeah, I wish I could have guarded Jimmy Butler a little bit more. So he's not backing the coach. He's not necessarily anything real bad, but he's not backing
hmm,
Budenholzer. He's not saying, "Oh, I trust Budenholzer with the matchups more than anyone else." Like he's,
mhm.
and he's leaving wiggle room to say, "Yeah, I wish I could have." Right? He's not saying, not saying all the things you'd want to hear if you're Budenholzer. He's not giving you glowing reviews at the end of it. He's
Right,
not going to when your team, when you're the number 1 seed and you lose in 5 games. No one's going to be, you know.
right.
Um,
Well, I think honestly the Thunder would be a really good spot for him. Uh because he's used to being in a small market team and he's played with a revolutionary stretch four already. And I feel like he would have a lot of good things that he could teach and do with Chet long term.
yeah, I'm with you. I think it'd be good, but I also don't know if we need to turn it on right now.
Agreed.
I think Dagnall.
I
I
think
think Dagnall,
the pace has been really good these last 3 years, and I don't think it needs to be accelerated. I think letting it happen as it's happened is just fine.
just hear me out on this. I think this is the best time to be a Thunder fan right now. I think this is the most fun, pure fun you can have as a Thunder fan right now because there's no
There's
real
no expectations.
yeah, there's no real expectations. There's no real frustrations when we don't do great. And when anyone does do great, it's like, oh my gosh, can't believe it. JJ
Mhm.
Redick and Tim Legler did a podcast that came out earlier today, actually, in front of the program, Jason Gallagher. Thanks so much for listening there. Is the editor for the podcast. Just want to toss him out there. But Legler said, yeah, Shea Gilgeous, like top 5 guys in like MVP discussions going forward. Like that wasn't happening a year ago. That just
That's
wasn't.
true.
It
Yeah.
wasn't type of talks. And also like Shea was in, Shea finished 5th in All-Star voting, or not All-Star, MVP voting, excuse me. And so that's crazy and awesome
Wow.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know. So at the end of the day, I think the Thunder are on a really good trajectory. I think this next year is going to be the make or break year on like
Yeah.
expectations though, because this upcoming draft, there's Thunder have 2 first round picks. They have their own, which who knows where it could fall. It has, I think, a 1.8% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick, which fingers, toes, every single thing I have is crossed, and I'm wearing the lucky keychain or whatever, and rabbit's foot and waving around, not trying to break any mirrors. You're walking underneath ladders, salt's always tossed behind my left, over my left shoulder. But the point being, Thunder only have 2, right? Only have 2, because after this year they have 4. So the
Mhm.
2024 NBA draft, the Thunder have 4 first round draft picks.
Jesus.
You can't keep all those what's good and bad. And I know I'm going on a segue here for a little bit, but
That's okay.
yeah, it's just one of the things is I forget exactly what his name was, but he was the Thunder signed a guy when I was covering the Oklahoma City Blue for HoopsNet. The Thunder signed a guy out of Stanford, I think out of Stanford, who ended up playing for the Spurs for a little bit. They ended up signing him to a non-guaranteed first-round contract because they didn't have the roster space to put him on the basically they create an exception to the rule. The Thunder were like, we want to trade back and still draft you, but we like you so much we want to take you here. And they ended up drafting him in the first round, but they worked out with the agent where it was a non-guaranteed NBA deal because they didn't have the draft capital. They didn't have the roster space. Put him put him on the roster. And that's what kind of sucks. Like if you have 4 first-round picks, every single team in the NBA knows you got to offload at least one or two of them because you can't, you can sign all these guys. They can all go to training camp. You can see how it works out from there. And granted, if it's picks 28, 29, and 30, all good by me because that means that you have, the last 3 picks and you can definitely figure out a way to say, hey, you know what, this guy was good, but not, and, whatever. And you can, get all kind of out of the way. But that's not this summer, but next summer. It's going to be like, all right, what's this Thunder team looking like? Is Dagnall the guy? Is Chet really good? Or is he just decent? I think his floor is still pretty darn high, right? But where are the Thunder at? All right, well, last question here. We'll end out the podcast here for sure.
Okay.
Who's your pick to win it all? You got late teams here. Huh?
At this point in the playoffs, man, I always hate doing these because then I feel like a fool if it doesn't go well.
Well, Zev, we can feel like a fools whenever we're on ESPN and Fox Sports. We're really got some stakes. Twitter, is verified, profiles up to stuff. Right now, I think there's pretty low levels here of pushback here if we're wrong. I don't think anyone's gonna come after us too hardcore.
Okay, good.
I'm setting the preface here real well. People take a ton of stock into what I'm saying.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, you're welcome, of course.
I would say that this looks like it is the time for the Nuggets, but I think that Embiid has a chip on his shoulder, and it would
Sixers.
And I think he would, I don't know, gloat for a long time if he could do the MVP and the championship in the same season, because that hasn't been done in quite a while, right?
No, hasn't been done forever almost. Yeah, that's a good one.
Granted, they have a lot to prove. I think, to me, the Nuggets are just the most dominant.
Yeah, it hasn't been done since, what did Giannis do at his MVP year? When his MVP, is it not too long ago? Before then, it would have been Steph in 2015, I think.
No, because I think that was the first Jokic MVP.
Oh, that was the first Jokic? Okay, yeah. You're right, because, Joker is 2020, 2021,
Joker.
And then before then, Joker. I couldn't understand if I want to say Joker or Jokic, and that's one of those things. Like, you know what, the Serbian, right? He's Serbian. Language doesn't translate too well to the U.S. because you see J and O and K, and you're like, I'm gonna pronounce it one way. Then the English language goes, you thought. So that's a good deal here. There's a history. I'm gonna play my flag here. I'm gonna say the Nuggets. I think the Nuggets. I think they're the bet. I like the Nuggets a lot. I think there's a lot of things going for them because if they match up against the Lakers, I feel pretty good. I feel like the Lakers are going to take, at least the Lakers are going to go 7, maybe 6, and they're going to get a tired Lakers and a tired Warriors team. But I wouldn't put, if Lakers won 1-0, if they win tonight, Golden State, then I'm flipping the Lakers. Lakers go up 2-0 against, the defending champions. It's hard not to pick them. So
yeah,
and
that's what's really interesting right now is there's so much parity. I haven't felt that it is this open and this anybody could get it in a long time. Like there's usually like the one or two teams. And especially now that the Bucks and Grizzlies are out, those were kind of my two that I was going to be following. But obviously that did not pan out.
Not at all, unfortunately. But
Yep.
it'll be more fun.
wear my
More
Dodgers
fun to talk
anymore.
about. Yeah, that's true. But it'll be more fun here the rest of the playoffs. I'll try to get you on here in a week or two again here. Do a little bit NBA
Sounds
catch
good.
up, you know. So
Yep.
thanks so much for everyone for listening. Please follow at the CGA Tour on Twitter and Instagram if you're not already. We just passed 30,000 plays on the podcast here
Woo!
overall. So
Heck
big
yeah.
congrats there. Yeah. But I'll go ahead and end it out here. So Zev, thanks so much as always for joining, and we'll catch
For
you guys
sure,
again
man. It's
soon.
been fun.